Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt, and I want to welcome people joining us this week on the Yoto podcast platform. Now, just so you know, most of the bedtime stories I tell here are standalone stories. But over the last year, we have been dipping in and out of the epic story of Odysseus, the hero from ancient Greek mythology. And this week, I'm going to be telling the second last installment of that tale. So if you can jump in right here, that'll be fine. I'm sure you'll pick it all up. But if you did want to go back to the beginning and start from the first episode, you can search back through the episodes. The first episode's called Odysseus, as told by Nanny Piggins, and it dropped on January 8th, 2025. Or you can go back and listen to any of the other episodes. You're going to find fairy tales, myths, legends, and mysteries. I hope you enjoy them all. Now let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. Well, welcome back. I hope you had a lovely Easter holidays if you're here in Australia or New Zealand, or I guess it's spring break if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. Anyway, if you did have a break from school or whatever, I hope you had a good time. We had a fabulous time with really spectacular weather on Easter Day. We went to the beach and it was just gorgeous. I'm back into it. It's good to be back. I'm still plugging away with my book about Romeo and Juliet at the moment. That's the main thing I'm focusing on. Although because my kids have been home from school for the last 2 weeks, I've got an enormous amount of work done. So I got to get that done in the next couple of weeks. And then not long till we launch the next Friday Barnes book. So that's all very exciting. So that's what's happening here in my world. But anyway, I've had a break from doing these stories for the last couple of weeks. It's been reruns. So let's get into it. Today, we're going to be doing the story of Noah's Ark, as told by Nanny Piggins. Here we go. Nanny Piggins, do you know anything about Noah? Asked Derek. Why, my dear boy, asked Nanny Piggins, who needs to know? Are you being pestered by biblical scholars who are desperate to find out the secrets that only members of my family know about what went on in the ancient Judean story days? No, said Derek. It's just that it's been raining so much lately that Mrs Lau's fishpond overflowed. We saw her this morning on the way to school. She was outside in a nightgown trying to scoop up a goldfish from the lawn and put them back in the pond. Poor Mrs Lau. I hope you stopped to help her, asked Nanny Piggins. Yeah, we did, said Derek. It didn't take long, so we didn't miss the bus, said Samantha. Never mind, said Nanny Piggins. Next time you'll know to draw it out more. The hard part was getting the carp that had flapped its way under her begonia bush, said Derek. Michael was the only one small enough to go and get it. It was very dark under the begonia bush, said Michael. It's a good job her goldfish was actually golden-coloured, or I never would have been able to see it. Ideally, she would have had one of those luminescent fish that live at the bottom of the ocean, said Nanny Piggins. Then it would have glowed in the dark. Oh, that would have been cool, agreed Michael. But anyway, said Derek, sensing that the conversation was getting off point, Mrs Lau said that if it didn't stop raining soon, we'd all have to start building arks just like Noah. So what does that mean? She's referring to Noah from the Bible, who lived back in the ancient Judean story days, explained Nanny Piggins. Was he human? Asked Samantha. Now, this may seem like an odd question, but you always had to ask when Nanny Piggins started a tale, so you didn't set off imagining the wrong thing. Oh, yes, said Nanny Piggins. Well, not literally. He was actually a pig. Let me guess, said Derek, and a distant relative of yours. Indeed, said Nanny Piggins. So was Noah also a staggeringly beautiful woman? Asked Michael. I'm afraid not, said Nanny Piggins. Noah was more from the Bramwell side of the family. His full name was Noah Bramwell Piggins. So he was no good, asked Samantha. By today's standards, maybe, said Nanny Piggins, but standards were different then. You'd better tell us the whole story, said Derek. All right, I will, said Nanny Piggins, but since it's a rainy day and I'm about to tell you a story about a lot of rain, I'd better make us all hot chocolates. We wouldn't want to catch a cold. Can you catch a cold just from hearing a story about rain? Asked Michael. Well, I don't want to risk it, said Nanny Piggins. I know some doctors and scientists insist that colds are caused by viruses, but I don't have faith in the judgment of anyone who voluntarily chooses to go into the medical profession and take up a job that involves touching sick people all day long. So, 20 minutes later, they each had a gallon jug of hot chocolate with extra marshmallows bobbing on top, so Nanny Piggins could begin her tale. It all started 4,000 years ago when my great-great-great times 2013 great's cousin Noah Piggins was 600 years old. 600 years old? How could he be 600 years old? Asked Samantha. I don't know, said Nanny Piggins. I wasn't there at the time. I can only assume he was very strict about making sure he ate lots of vitamins in his diet, probably by consuming vast amount of cake. Now, it just so happened that in the ancient biblical days, everyone was incredibly wicked. Everyone, asked Samantha. Well, everyone except Noah, said Nanny Piggins. I thought you said he was no good, like your brother Bramwell, said Michael. Well, he was a Bramwell, so he was lazy, agreed Nanny Piggins, but he was too lazy to be actually evil, wicked, or dastardly, and everyone else in the entire world was. Really? Asked Derek. Look, I didn't make this story up, said Nanny Piggins. I'm just telling you how it was. If you've got a problem with a narrative structure, you'll just have to build a time machine and go back 4,000 years and ask the person who wrote it down. But time machines don't exist, said Michael. Then save your questions until they do, said Nanny Piggins. As I was saying, all the people in the world were wicked and evil. In what way? Asked Samantha. I'm not entirely sure, said Nanny Piggins, but they were wicked enough to really get on God's nerves, so I assume it must have been something very bad. Like using the last square of toilet paper and not putting a new roll on the spindle? Asked Michael. Yes, something just like that, said Nanny Piggins. Or mowing the lawn at 7 a.m. on a Saturday when everyone's trying to sleep in? Asked Derek. Exactly. That's the level of diabolicalness, I'm sure, said Nanny Piggins. Or becoming a tax lawyer? Asked Samantha. Oh, that's so inconceivably wicked, said Nanny Piggins. That must have been it. Let's imagine that. The entire population of the world was going around using up all the toilet paper, mowing their lawns at crack of dawn, and practicing tax law. It was a ruthless, morally bankrupt age, so God decided to do something about it. He went to the best behaved person on earth, who was Noah, which just shows how dreadful everyone else must have been if a Bramwell was the best among them. God went to Noah and he said, Noah, I command you to build an ark. Huh? Said Noah. Are you talking to me? Of course I'm talking to you. I said Noah, didn't I? Who else do you know called Noah? It's not a very common name. Oh, okay, said Noah. But what's an ark? What do you mean, what's an ark? Asked God. It's an ark. Yeah, never heard of one, said Noah. God sighed and began to wonder if he should have asked one of the early morning lawn-mowing people instead, but he persevered. An ark is really just another word for a box. But in this case, I want you to build a huge box that floats and will hold an enormous amount of stuff. So you mean a big boat? Asked Noah. Sort of, said God, but it can be box-shaped, because it doesn't need to sail anywhere, it just needs to float. Oh, right, said Noah. But why? Because I am sick of the behaviour of all the humans on earth, said God. They have all been very naughty, so I'm going to make it rain for 40 days and 40 nights until the entire world is covered in water, and every living thing that breathes oxygen is destroyed. Whoa, hold on, interrupted Samantha. God was going to kill every living thing on earth? That's a bit harsh, said Michael. That's even worse than Mr. Spencer, said Derek. Mr. Spencer was Derek's maths teacher and the cruelest person Derek personally knew. To be fair, said Nanny Piggins, when God said the whole world, he probably didn't mean what we mean by the whole world today. Back in the ancient story times, people thought the whole world was just the countries around the Mediterranean Sea. And there were less people back then too, so there would have only been a few million people in that area. Still, that's a lot of people to cover in water, said Michael. And it would kill all the animals too, said Samantha. Yes, that does seem very mean, agreed Nanny Piggins. I can understand wanting to rid the world of humans. But pigs? We're such a talented, charismatic and attractive species. It doesn't make sense. Who knows what God was thinking? Maybe he'd been bitten too many times by mosquitoes, or someone's dog kept pooping on his flower bed. It's a mystery. The main thing is God told Noah to build an ark. "What stuff do you want me to put in the ark?" asked Noah. "2 of every kind of animal," explained God, "so that when the flood water recedes, you can repopulate the entire world." "Right," said Noah. "Are you sure you want me to take 2 of everything? This might be a good time to cut back on a few species. The less fun ones, like vampire bats and anacondas and rats. Do we really need those?" "Just do as you're told," said God. So Noah set to work building an ark big enough to hold 2 of every kind of animal in the world. "But there are so many types of animals. It must have been inconceivably enormous," said Derek. "Yes. Luckily, Noah had 3 sons, so he was able to delegate a lot of the carpentry. Still, they too like to take naps, so building the ark took 100 years. 100 years, said Samantha. "I know," said Nanny Piggins, "even slower than tradesmen today. But God didn't mind. It gave the entire population of the world a chance to redeem themselves and improve their behaviour." "Did they?" asked Michael. "Oh, gosh, no. If anything, they got worse," said Nanny Piggins. "Now, as well as using toilet paper, mowing their lawns and practising tax law, they were also taunting Noah and hiding his hammer when he took a nap." Noah tried to warn them. "Stop that! God's going to send a flood and wipe out every living thing that breathes air on the world." But they just laughed and carried on with their wickedness. Once the ark was built, the next task was collecting 2 of every animal. "Now, how did he do that?" asked Derek. "That would be even harder than building a massive ark. You'd have to travel to all the different countries, then capture all the different animals." "You'd need specialist training to try and catch a lion," said Michael. "Even a giraffe," said Samantha. "If it thought you were going to shove it in a boat, it'd just run away." Yes, and there were no tranquilizer darts or even pet carriers back in the ancient Judean story days, so God sent some angels down to handle all the travel arrangements and transport all the animals to the ark. Noah stood back as the animals walked up the ramp and into his ark, 2 by 2. As soon as the last 2 animals boarded, the zebras because Noah liked to alphabetize, he pulled up the ramp and rain started to fall. It rained and rained. For the first couple of days, the rain washed down the hills into the rivers, and the rivers swelled. But then it kept raining, so the rivers broke their banks. Next, the lakes overflowed and flooded the valleys. Then the whole sea began to rise, and Noah's ark started to float up off the ground. The rain kept falling and falling. The water level crept higher and higher up the hills and higher up the mountains until the highest mountain in the entire world was covered by 15 cubits of water. "What's a cubit?" asked Michael. "It's an ancient unit of measurement," explained Nanny Piggins, "based on the size of a Rubik's Cube." "So everything in the world was covered by water, including Mount Everest?" asked Samantha. "Yes, you could have gone swimming directly above Mount Everest, and if you'd reached down with your tippy toes, you wouldn't even have touched the peak." "Oh, that would have been so cool," said Michael. "Much easier than climbing it." "After 40 days and 40 nights, the rain stopped," said Nanny Piggins. "That must have been a relief," said Michael. "Oh, yes, it was," said Nanny Piggins. "Rain makes it so hard to maintain a stylish hairdo." Now everyone on the ark just had to wait. "For what?" asked Michael. "For the water to evaporate," said Nanny Piggins. "But that'd take forever," said Derek. "It did," said Nanny Piggins. "Well, not literally forever, but a very long time. For over a year, the ark bobbed around on the endless sea, never sighting any land. I imagine it was not terribly pleasant stuck in a boat with so many animals." "There would have been a lot of poop," said Michael. "Michael Green, don't talk about such indelicate matters when we're eating," said Nanny Piggins. "We're not eating," said Michael. "Well, not now," said Nanny Piggins, "but I'm almost always just about to eat, and I'd not like to have my appetite ruined. I just meant that being on an extremely long cruise with a large number of animals who have very little in common must be very challenging. It wasn't like a modern cruise ship that had movie theatres and water slides. There wouldn't have been much to do. They couldn't even have played cards because so few of the animals had opposable thumbs. The only thing that kept them going was the fact that Mrs. Noah was really, really good at baking cake, said Nanny Piggins. In the wild, the tigers would have passed the time by eating the zebras, and the snakes would have whiled away the hours by snacking on some mice. It would have been a bloodbath if nature had been allowed to take its course. But that didn't happen, because on board the Ark, every day, there was a fabulous banquet of cake. Honey cake, lemon cake, poppy seed cake, black forest cherry cake, you name it, every type of cake imaginable was served. So the animals were very happy. The problem was, after a year at sea, they were starting to run out of cake ingredients. After all, they only had 2 cows, one of whom was a boy cow, so there was only one lady cow to produce milk, and she was not capable of producing enough milk to make enough butter. And you need a lot of butter to make enough cake to feed 2 of every animal in the world, so things were getting dire. All the while, Noah was conscious that he was a pig, and bacon is delicious. The tigers and lions were starting to eye him and lick their lips, so Noah desperately needed to find somewhere to land his ark. Every day Noah would take one of the doves and send it out to look for land. Every night the tired dove would fly back empty-beaked, and they were all beginning to lose hope. Then one morning Noah woke up and found a lion was basting him with barbecue sauce. "What are you doing?" demanded Noah. "Oh, nothing," said the lion. "I'm just giving you an all-body facial. Barbecue sauce is very good for the skin. It'll make you look younger." "I'm 700 years old," said Noah. "It's too late for that." "Oh, you look fabulous," said the lion. "Just leave it on and sit in a cool place for 12 hours. "You're marinating me, aren't you?" demanded Noah. Fortunately, at that moment, Noah's son Ham called out. "Whoa, wait a minute. Noah had a son called Ham?" asked Derek. "Well, what's so odd about that?" asked Nanny Piggins. "He was a pig." "Oi, Dad, your dove's back," said Ham. "Just pop it in the cage then," said Noah, trying to wipe off some of the barbecue sauce. "Oh, you got to come and look," said Ham. "It's got something in its beak." "It has?" exclaimed Noah. He rushed up to the deck to see for himself, and the dove did indeed have a twig in its beak. Noah was overjoyed. "Why?" asked Michael. "Because if the dove had found a twig, then it must have found land," said Nanny Piggins. "Oh, gotcha," said Michael. "Plus, this was no ordinary twig," said Nanny Piggins. "It was a twig from the greatest plant known to man." "A cake plant?" asked Samantha. "Close," said Nanny Piggins. "It was a twig from a cacao plant, the type of plant chocolate is made from." So Noah floated the ark over to the land, everyone got off and went back to their natural habitats. Mankind discovered chocolate, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. "Except for all the people and animals who died in the flood," said Samantha. "Yes, apart from them. Everyone else lived happily ever after. The end," said Nanny Piggins. "Now let's make chocolate cake to celebrate the fact that the world isn't covered in floodwater." And that is what they did. The end. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. That's it for now. Until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.